In a two-party system, the theory is that the ideas and the debates and the candidates are selected by the democracy within a party that has a broad take on the direction society should go. And yet, we've seen what happened. We had John McDonnell on the call, who, by opposing the idea that children shouldn't be in poverty, has been kicked out of the parliamentary party. So that is the problem with the current democratic system. It was never that democratic in the first place, but let's be honest, it is now damn near impossible for anybody to represent the interests of working people through that route. And Drew was talking about South Tyneside Council. I could tell you some interesting stories, actually. But when I was negotiating the North East Devolution deal, Ian Malcolm, who was the then leader, disappeared in a cloud. Like, it was almost like a magic trick. And I think he's since been charged with various corruption issues. But I spoke to the deputy who then took over and said, look, we were in the middle of devolution negotiations. This is the position, etc. And she said, oh, I have no idea what was happening. Ian never told us. So it's not just 9 councillors. There was 1 councillor who knew what was going on and was making the decisions. He couldn't get less democratic than just having 1 person in charge. And on the subject of gifts, by the way, it's the case that people give you gifts so that they know you, so that when they want a favour, they can ring up and talk to you. And because they know you, they have access. And that's why I turned down every offer of hospitality and claimed 0 expenses in my 5 years as mayor. And it may be something to do with that got me kicked out of the Labour Party as well. Although, to be fair, I did leave. We ran Citizens' Assembly as North Tyneside mayor. And Citizens' Assemblies cover actually a huge range of things. It's not a one-size-fits-all by any stretch of the imagination. So the one we did on Citizens' Assembly on climate change, which covered the whole of the North Tyne, included mailing 10,000 people through a proper sortition system and see who applied, and then it did it on the basis of demographics. So you had urban students and rural farmers, and this whole group of people came together. They got paid for their time. They all put in 35 hours of work, and it was astonishing, the quality of the results that came out of it. They deliberated, they got to choose their own experts, they got to choose their own propositions, and then they all voted on them. And the remarkable thing was that they voted against something. So one of the propositions was politicians should be prosecuted if they fail to deliver their manifestos. And pretty much everyone voted against that as just totally untenable. There is no legal framework for that, so why do it? Which is great, because that's what we want, is practical solutions to real problems. And the things that they did come up with were pretty much what I would have come up with if I'd sat down and written it myself. But I explained to them right at the beginning, and this was run independently of me, although I funded it and they introduced it and then picked up the recommendations, was we've also got to separate out what is within scope of any given branch of government. So I said, there are things that we can do and have the power to do. And if you decide them, I will do them. And we did. And then there are those things where we'll have to collaborate with others, perhaps councils, perhaps the NHS, in which case I'll try and convene it. Then there are those that I don't have any power to do whatsoever as mayor, in which case I'll lobby for them, such as lobbying for different regulations from central government. And that's part of the approach, is we don't want to say to people, we are going to fix the world if we all come together in the village hall. It's about understanding the nature of power. And that takes us on to why we set up majority. There are lots of people campaign, but if you leave people in state power who have no interest in democracy and have no interest in progressive politics, whatever gains you make, they're going to be clawed back very, very quickly. So majority has a political set of values, which is very, very basic, simple. I would imagine most people, well, actually, it's called majority because the majority of people agree with them, about 70% of the country on all polls. Simple things like taxation should represent the vast majority of people. Our public services should be run in our interests and not in the interests of different distant shareholders. But then beyond that, local areas can set up their own manifesto. So maybe that in Gateshead, they're interested in social housing, and in Newcastle, they're interested in buses. And that's fine, because that's how democracy works. It reflects people's immediate needs. And the other thing that it's very keen on, so we describe majority, it's not a party, although it will support people who are running for office, and it will train people as well. Because one of the barriers to democracy is this incredibly difficult screen that's put up about constitutions and terminology and committees and all this phraseology that makes it very, very hard for people to cut through and get things done, even if they are elected. So part of it's training. When you've had somebody who's run a branch of government as I have, they can help navigate that. So this is about, the second part of it is the Nolan principles of public life. Now, I'm firmly of the opinion that if we just had every elected official followed evidence and was honest, we'd be halfway there. And they don't sound like much, but I don't think they're possible unless it's a means to hold people to account anyway. So that's what we're doing with the majority. We're working with a lot of people, working with Assemble. If you go to time2assemble.org, really hope to work with CAST, Citizen Assemblies South Tyneside, to get something up and running for next year. We'll be doing a lot in Newcastle and in the elections coming up in Northumberland and Durham. I'll put a little link in the chat, and if you're interested, please do get in touch.